Welcome to EPG Pathshala. In the paper Web Application Development using PHP, today I am going to discuss about object oriented programming. I have divided into 4 different modules. So today I am going to discuss about first module. The learning objective of today's session is object oriented programming introduction, terminology for object oriented programming which include class, object, properties, method, how to create and use object, and constructor and deconstructor we are discussing. So there are mainly, let's start about introduction to object oriented programming. There are two main ways to writing programming. These two ways are, the first one is procedure oriented programming and second one is object oriented programming. In procedure oriented programming, the focus was on writing procedure, that you have to write procedure and this procedure is writing for data. Let's take one example. For example, if there is we would like to develop one system on library management system. So developer has to write code on various procedures like to create a member or register a member, to issue a book, to return a book, and to find calculate the fine if user not return the book, member not return the book on the time. While in object oriented programming, the focus is on object. Object combine both data and procedure as a single entity, and there can be for library management systems or library management system, the object is member, book, and librarian. There is an association among this object like member returns book. So this is a difference between these two. Object oriented programming is considered easy to maintain, reuse as well as extend. Object oriented programming facilitates to reusability, write module of your code as well as extend the existing codes. So it will be provide rapid application development, means your application can be developed very fast. Now both approach are their way is correct, whether you are using procedure oriented or object oriented. It is a just matter of choice whether you are prefer object oriented method or procedure oriented method. And in PHP also you can work with either procedure oriented or object oriented, though it is not recommended. Even within a single PHP script you can write code by using procedure oriented as well as object oriented within a single script. Let's move to some of this concept of object oriented terminology. Okay, any object oriented programming has this 4 concepts. These concepts are encapsulation, inheritance, polymorphism, and data abstraction. So let us discuss one by one. So what is encapsulation? Encapsulation means that it consider data and functions or methods as a single entity, and it facilitates to hide the data from all users. If we take example in terms of object oriented programming, then it allows you to change anything using say for example you would like to change objects property, so that only you can change through objects public method only, otherwise you cannot change it. So that's why it provide encapsulation. Second thing is inheritance. So that means once you create a class, this is generally known as a base class or parent class, then the class has some properties and method. So these properties and method can be used by another class known as a child class. So child class is inherit each attributes and method, each attribute and method of the parent class. Not only that, if child class wants to modify the existing properties and method of parent class, it can modify, as well as it can add its own attributes and methods. So this is inheritance. Polymorphism is actually a Greek word which is combination of 2 words. In the Greek language, poly means many or more and morph means form or shape. So polymorphism provides many forms to write a single thing. Let's talk about in OOP concept. So you can write a method, but polymorphism allow you to write the give same method name for different types of uses. Say for example, you would like to write a method named max, which will be find the maximum value from the input integer value or floating point value, or for a string which string has a maximum length. So the function name will be same is max. So of course the signature is different for each method. And last one is data abstraction. So data abstraction is hiding implementation complexity through interface. Say for example, when you want to data abstraction provide what you want to do by hiding how to do it. So that will be make outside users will be easy. Say for example, it give you access to a method, but what the method actually perform, that will be not shown to the outside of class. We take analogy of our day-to-day life, we can say that we know that car has an accelerator. So that will be, you know that when you use accelerator, that will be increase your speed. So this is actually interface or a layer which only shows that it will be increase your car speed, but how it will internally work, that you don't bother about it. So this is one type of abstraction. Of course in OOP it is data abstraction. If we now move to the properties of OOP, so let me discuss one by one. The first one is class. So what is class? So you can consider class as a programmer defined data type, and it can also treated as a blueprint or prototype, and objects are created from class only. A object cannot be created without a class. So what is object? Object is an instance of a class, and object is created from class, and a class can have many objects. Next one is property. So property is data associated with objects, and this property is also known as an attribute as well as member data for an object. Method or function, which is known as a behavior of associated with an object, and it is also known as a member function, and object can have data and methods both, and that can be used with this one. Now let us take one example so you get idea about that, because you might wonder what is class, what is property, etc. Say for example, cricketer is a class. So you can say Sachin Tendulkar, Rahul Dravid, Saurav Ganguly, these all are instances of cricketer. So these all are objects of that cricketer class. Now these have some common attributes or properties, like they wear special type of clothes, they were wearing special type of pair of shoes for playing cricket, they have cricket team name for which they are playing. So these all are their attributes: team name, special types of clothes they are wear, or shoes of pairs, etc. And they are doing some actions or behavior, like they can bat, bowl, field, or wicket keeping. So these all are methods of this class, right? So this is considered as their method, or you can say behavior. So this is object, and object has properties as well as their methods, and these properties and methods are known as a member of an object, and you can use it whenever you require it. Now let's say how you can do it practically. So let me discuss with their syntax as well. To define a class, you have to type class and then provide class name, and then into curly braces you can write your statement. Class is a keyword. Class name, you can write any naming convention, but generally for convention class name is begin with capital letters and it should be meaningful. To define a property, you can use the syntax as a access modifier, then you can use dollar for as we use in PHP as a variable name, and then property name, and optional you can provide assignment operator and initial value. So this access modifier can be public, private, or protected. Public attribute can be accessed outside of that class, while private or protected is not accessed outside of the class in which it is defined. By default properties are public, so if you not write access modifier, the property is considered as a public. And if you assign initial value, as it is optional for defining property, then the initial value of property must be a scalar value, an array of scalar value or null value. We know that scalar value means a literal string, number or boolean value. You can define multiple properties within the same line by separating them with comma. These are the example of properties. For example, I define here private space and $name. So this is one of the property name is name and its access modifier is private. Then I another define public property, public $greetings is assigned to empty string. So this is access modifier for this property is public, name is greetings and value is not assigned. You can same way define protected total, and here I define in the single line private $first name, comma $surname, $city. So these are the three attributes or properties of private access modifier. Method. So to define a method, the general syntax is access modifier, then the keyword function, then you have to write function name, and you can provide a parameter list. Of course, parameter list is optional, but the parenthesis is compulsory, though it will be take 0 parameters. By default, access modifier for the methods are also public. So if you omit it, it will be take by default public. However, it is recommended that you should provide access modifier to improve the readability of your code. These are the example of methods. Say for example, public function calculate discount and it takes 0 parameter, but the parenthesis is written. So function name is calculate discount and its access modifier is public, and within curly braces you can write statements. Private function get interest, so it takes 3 parameter P, R and N, and then you can write any statement. Another good example is about constructor. But I think before move to constructor, let me give idea about how you write the implement all this by writing a code. So let me start my WAMP server. So I have just start my WAMP server and write start coding. So let me open my notepad++, and as I would like to start it here, I will type my code over opening and closing PHP tag. Let me save this file as a file, save as, and I will create in WAMP folder, new folder. The folder name I would like to, in EPG, I would like to give this one as a OOP1, and inside that here I create object1 or object.php, as simple as I would like to demonstrate about a class and object. So this is PHP. Now I create one class. Let me create one class, as it is recommended that class name first name is capital. Here I define class employee. So this is my class employee, and in that I have to use curly braces to, this is the class block, opening and closing curly braces. Now I define some properties. So let me write some comment. Let me write private properties of class employee. So I write private dollar for employee. Let me define EID and employee name E name. You can write comment if you require employee ID and employee name. I have to provide semicolon once I define that. Then I have to write methods. So let me write first method, public function. The function name I will write get EID to get employee ID. It does not take any parameter, so I just write return $this and EID. Now $this is a special variable that you can use within the class. It stores reference to the current object. So you can use $this to access the properties of or method of the current object. So that's why I write $this EID. Now I define public function set EID and I pass any parameter. Here I give name $value. You can give any parameter name, but for simplicity I use $value, and I can write $this EID is assigned to $value. That means the value is passed here is set for employee ID and get EID will retrieve it. In the same way I have to write for ename. So first I write public function get ename. Of course I can write first set and then get, but this is just general way. I write first get and then here I write return $this. My property name is here I defined ename, so I have to type that ename. Look at here, I write $this and this hyphen and greater than symbol. This is known as an object access operator. And we remember, when you use object access operator, there must not be any space between these two. And then when you code the name of your attribute or property, don't include $symbol. So as I write here, return $this ename. And let me write for public function set ename $value, and let me write $this and ename is assigned to $value. So this is the within my class I have defined two attributes. The access modifier is private, so they are not accessible outside the class, and the methods for I define method for get and set their method. These are known, get method is used to read the value and set is used to write, so they are known as a read only and write only. And when you write get and set, they are known as a getter and setter value. So here I set getter setter for employee ID and employee name. Now my class definition is complete. To create any object, let me create $emp is, I have to use the keyword new and employee, class name new employee. Now I can set that value by using this method $emp, and I will write set EID. Okay, let me first print that what actually happens. So I can use print_r function and type $emp. Let me first save it and show you what actually it will store in as an object. So I save this one. Let me open my WAMP server. As it is open, I move to the local host. In localhost, I save my code on the folder EPG in OOP1 object.php. So look at it, shows employee object with attribute employee ID of class employee and its private access specifier. Second attribute is ename of class employee, and again access modifier is private. Now I can set value here. I can say $emp and set EID. As it take value, let me enter 1. Let me say echo br after set EID to 1, and again br as I would like to print it in the next line, and let me type now print_r $emp. Let me define $emp. Okay, first let me visualize this. So I save this file, refresh this code. So look at here, now it will be display employee ID is set to 1. In the same way, you can set $emp set name is, let me enter name, let's say it's Anand, and you can say echo br after setting emp name br, close the code, and again print underscore r $emp. So now $emp will shows you both the method, set ename, that's why it generate error, so I have to write set ename, save this one, refresh this page. So now it will be display 1 and Anand. So this is the simple example that we have created. I just let me make you very clear. First I define class name is employee, then we define two attribute or property, and access modifier is private, so they are not accessible outside class. Even we can check it also, like say for example if I say $emp and let me set eid is equal to, let's say, 10. So this line will show you error. Let me write echo br access private attribute and br to display it in next line. Now I write echo $emp and get eid. So this line will shows error. The simple reason is eid is private. If we look at this code, it says cannot access private property eid on line 35. The reason is that employee id we define is private. If I make this public, just look at here, I save this, put comment, and here I write public. Let me write, or I can define that way also, public, and this one is private. So now if I check this one, okay, syntax error on line 7. So the error, okay, I have not provided semicolon, so let me put semicolon here, save this one and run this. So look at here, now it is displayed 10. So this is actually, you can see the use of encapsulation, because if property is private you cannot access it. Let me make it correct by private. The general reason is that this is your data and it should be private, so you should not use that, and that's why here I also put in comments. So this is a practical example of encapsulation, because your attribute is private, you can access it only through public method, not any another way. As I try to set the value directly, I get error. So this is about this one. I hope this will be clear to you. Though I not explain you much, let me do it again, that we have considered about this constructor. Let's come to constructor. Till we have covered up to that point. So constructor is executed when a new object is created from the class. It is actually special method or known as a constructor method, and it is often used to initialize the property of object. And in constructor you can use $this variable. As I said, $this is a special variable which you can use within the class. $this stores reference to the current object, so $this is used to access the properties and method of current object. And to use this you have to write $this, then you have to use object access operator, which consists of hyphen and greater than symbol, and then the name of property or method. The syntax to create constructor is function _ constructor into parenthesis optional parameter list. The constructor name is must be _ construct, and of course you can also provide access modifier when you define any constructor. If you don't define any constructor, like as we haven't defined any constructor in the example I have already taken, though, so it will take a default constructor by PHP itself. The default constructor is a parameter less constructor, it doesn't take any parameter into it, and it will be work. And in PHP you can use maximum one constructor method. So if you want to use constructor which has a different parameter, one constructor has take one parameter, second constructor take more than one parameter, So better way is that, as I explained in function, that you have to define function underscore num underscore argus function, and using that function initially you provide null value to all the parameters you require and set the value according to that way. And a constructor is automatically created when a new object is created from a class. This is one example of constructor: public function underscore construct, $f name is null and L name is none. So it works for 0 parameter, any one parameter as well, function name or last name. As like constructor, there is a destructor or deconstructor method as well. This method is used when object is no longer available to use. So generally it is required when you use to end your script. So that will be used when your object is no longer available, and it will be also called automatically when you called the unset function to delete the object reference for that one. And the syntax for this one is also function underscore destruct, and destructor is automatically also closed. And as I say, object is an instance of class. We can create more than one object from a single class, and the process of creating an object from a class is known as a instantiation, because you create one instance of a class. The syntax to create object is object name is assigned to $new class name. So we have already create one object when we write $emp is new employee. So $emp is actually one object. And to reference the object, you can write object name, object access operator and property name. And to reference object method, you can write object name, object access operator and property name. Now if any function or method returns an object, then that reference call can be used to get the reference of other objects. This is known as a object chaining. Say for example $obj and the method get category. Now this one may return one object, and that can be used to call this other value. So this is object reference. Now in that function I haven't used constructor, so let me write this code which using constructor. So let me create new class file. So I type PHP opening and closing braces, file, save as, and save this one as a second constructor dot PHP. Let me create class employee. Once again I define two attribute: private employee ID and employee name. Then I define here constructor public function double underscore, let me put some more space, as white space you can use in PHP, and function name is construct, construct, and it takes two parameter $eid and $ename, and within that constructor I can say $this object access operator eid is $eid, $this ename is $ename, and then I can use getter and setter for the same employee ID and that one. So let me write public function get eid, and in that I will write return $this eid. For setting value I will write public function set eid and $value. As I said, it is not necessary, but generally $value is written. Then you can set $this eid is assigned to $value. For ename you can write that way: public function get ename. So this function will return $this object access operator and property name is ename. For set the value, public function set ename $value and $this ename is assigned to $value. So our class definition is complete. Now to create, let me create $emp is create the object new, class name is employee, and I have to provide, as I define in constructor, 2 parameters. I have to provide the value. Let's say for example it is 1, name is say Dharmesh, echo br object after provide values, and again br, and let me use print underscore r $emp. So I save this file. Let me open it. So it is constructor.php. So look at here, it will be save the value 1 and Dharmesh. We remember when you define constructor, so now as I say that in PHP you can use only one constructor. I cannot write any object like $emp1 is assigned to new employee and empty parenthesis, because if you don't define then PHP take default constructor, but if you define and you want to try this, then it will generate error because it says you have to provide this 2 parameter. So this thing you should keep in mind. So let me summarize this session. First we consider about 2 approaches of writing program: object oriented programming and procedure oriented programming. Procedure oriented programming is focused on procedures, while object oriented is focused on object. Object oriented programming is easier to maintain, reuse and extend. It will be provide rapid application development, though both are, this is just matter of choice, you can use any of them. Then we consider any object oriented programming should support the properties are encapsulation, inheritance, polymorphism and data abstraction. Then we consider about what is class, object, properties and method. Then we take example of that, and finally we consider what is constructor and destructor. I hope you enjoying this.